Salve discipuli. Today I'm going to be going through a presentation on the Latin alphabet and pronunciation. I will have this Google slide available on our Google Classroom page if you want to go back and go through it at your own pace. But I just wanted to run through it with this voiceover to kind of walk through things, especially since pronunciation, it helps to hear how they are pronounced rather than just trying to read it. So let's get started. Okay. So the Latin alphabet. Nice thing about the Latin alphabet, it's where we get our English alphabet from, so it should look pretty familiar to you all. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, oh dear, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, X, Z. Missing a couple things there, but most of it is the same as our English alphabet. So the letters we are missing, K and Y, are not actually in the classical Latin alphabet. However, they did exist in ancient Greek, so you will sometimes see them in Latin words that come from Greek words, that are borrowed from ancient Greek. This usually happens in names that you'll see in stories and things like that. The letters J and W do not exist in Latin at all, at least not in classical Latin. So you will not see any Latin words in this class that have a J or W in them. Now, some of you might be thinking, what about Julius Caesar? His name has a J and he was an ancient Roman. Maybe you weren't thinking that, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit anyway, so we'll cover that bit of confusion in just a bit. So, standard alphabet, just missing 4 letters. 2 of them you will occasionally see, K and Y. J and W you will not see at all ever in this Latin class. Now, some basic pronunciation rules before we get started. There are no silent letters in Latin. You will pronounce every single letter in every single Latin word, even if there is an E at the end of the word. Final letter E is pronounced in Latin with an E sound. We'll do some practice with that in a minute. Most letters are pronounced one way, and they are always pronounced that way no matter where they are in a sentence, no matter how the word is spelled, no matter what letters are next to it. Letters are pronounced one way and one way only, except for vowels that are technically pronounced 2 ways. But the nice thing is, once you know the one pronunciation each letter has, you should theoretically be able to pronounce every Latin word that exists, even if you've never seen it before. So that makes it a bit easier than English. The trickiest part is getting the hang of the differences in how some Latin letters are pronounced. So that's what we're going to move on to next. So first we're going to cover consonants because this is the easiest part of Latin pronunciation. Most consonants in Latin are pronounced the same way they are in English. B is pronounced B, D is pronounced D, M is S is S, and so on and so forth. There are 4 noticeable differences that we will cover right now. The letter C in Latin is always going to be pronounced like the letter K with a K sound. The letter C is never pronounced S in Latin, right? Now, if you are in a church, specifically Catholic Church, that is called ecclesiastical pronunciation, and it tends to follow more Italian-based rules. So you might hear some C's pronounced differently in a church than you would in our classroom. But in our classroom, we do classical pronunciation, which is going to be a K. So this word here, C-E-N-A, this word is actually pronounced kenna, right? So the letter C is always a K sound in classical Latin. Now the letter G in classical Latin is always going to be a hard sound, so it's going to have that G, that hard G sound like in our word great. There is no J sound in Latin at all. Remember, there is no letter J, so we can't get that J sound from a J, and the letter G in Latin does not make that sound, so you will never have a Latin word with the J sound in it. The letter G is always going to be a G. These 2 are a little tricky to get the hang of in certain words. We'll see some examples of that. The letter V, this is another one that takes a little bit of getting used to. This letter in classical Latin is always going to be pronounced like a W. There is no W in classical Latin, so the letter V is pronounced W to kind of make up for that. There is no V sound in Latin there, so that's a little tricky to get used to. So this word here, A-V-I-S, this word is actually pronounced awis, not avis. Okay, so again, this one might take some getting used to, but once we do some practice, you'll get the hang of it. Oh, by the way, this word at the top, cenna, is our Latin word for dinner, and awis is the Latin word for bird, if you're curious. Now, this last one is one of the weirder ones. The letter I. It's usually a vowel in Latin, but like our English letter Y, it can also sometimes be a consonant. So in English, the letter Y can kind of be a consonant or a vowel. In Latin, the letter I works the same way. So usually I will be a vowel, and we'll talk about how it's pronounced as a vowel in just a second. But if the letter I is at the beginning of a word and before another vowel, it is going to act like a consonant and will be pronounced Y, like our letter Y. This isn't that common. It only happens in a few words, but this is where that Julius Caesar comes into play. Remember, there's no J's in Latin, so Julius, his name was actually originally pronounced with an I instead of a J, and it was pronounced Julius, right? And his last name was pronounced a little bit differently too. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. So that I at the beginning of the word before another vowel will be pronounced Y. So those are the four consonants that are a bit different. Again, all the rest of the consonants are pronounced the way you would in English, so just go for it that way and it'll be nice and easy. Let's practice that a bit. So our first word we have here, take a look at this. We have a G in this word. Remember how G's are pronounced in Latin? This word is not pronounced rigidus, although it is where we get our word rigid from. It is in fact pronounced rigidus. You don't have to roll your R's. I do naturally, but you don't have to. You can say rigidus. It's just fine. Keep that G hard. All right, this next word, again, might look somewhat familiar because we get an English word from it, but it is not pronounced magicus. No J sound. It is pronounced magicus with that G, that hard G. This word is also tricky because it looks like an English word we have that we would typically pronounce biceps. In Latin, this word is actually pronounced biceps. That I, again, we'll talk about vowel pronunciation in a minute, is going to make that I sound. And remember, C is always a K sound like our letter K, biceps. This word has two things. Not only do we have that C, we also have that final letter E that I mentioned a few slides ago. Remember, in Latin, you have to pronounce every single letter. So this word is actually pronounced facile. All right, I pressed the button a little too soon, but we have this next word. Again, we've got a few C's in here, and this should look like an English word that you are familiar with. It is not, however, pronounced circus in Latin. It is pronounced circus, and it means a race course. The meaning has changed a bit in English. All right, here we have that consonantal I that I was talking about. We've got an I at the beginning of a word, and it's before another vowel, so it's going to be pronounced with a Y sound. So this word is yakio, yakio, I throw. And then our last word, we have that V. Remember, V is pronounced like a W in Latin. This word is pronounced vestitus, vestitus, with that W sound. All right, on to vowels, and this is probably the trickier part. I'm going to move my face up so that it's not blocking the chart here. Oh, come here. Where's my thing? There we go. Latin has the same 5 vowels that English has, which is nice, A, E, I, O, U. Now in Latin, vowels will be either long or short. English does this too. Latin's just a bit more strict on the rules. Short vowels are pronounced one way, long vowels are pronounced a different way. Now the nice thing is our long vowels are going to have this line over them that is called a macron. So that kind of tells you that it's a long vowel and it's going to be pronounced a little bit differently. So here in this chart, I've just got all the vowels, and I've got a few English words that kind of help you figure out how this particular Latin vowel is going to be pronounced with an English example. So short A is going to be more of an sound, like in the word ahead, and long A is going to be more of an ah sound. Now, it can also sometimes be more of an than an ah. That's the only one where it's a little flexible. But the letter A in Latin is never pronounced A. It's kind of weird because our vowels don't make their name sounds in Latin. It's a little tricky to get the hang of, but the letter A is either going to be an or an ah kind of a sound. E is a bit more straightforward. That short E is an sound, like in our word bet. And long E is going to be an A sound, like we see here in the word hay. The letter E, again, it does not make its name sound. It's never pronounced E. We get that from a different vowel. The letter I, short I, is going to be pronounced I, like in our word bin. And long I, again with that line over it, is going to be pronounced E. This is where we get that E sound. We see this in English in the word marine, that E sound for a long I. Short O is going to be an ah, like in our word off. Long O is going to be more of an O sound, like in our word roll, right? Short U is an like in our word put. Long U is going to be an oo sound, like in our word rude. It's more of that oo, okay? These ones take a bit more practice to get used to, especially some of these long vowels can be a bit tricky. Long E and long I tend to be the hardest ones for us as English speakers to get used to. I'm going to give us some examples in just a minute, but there's one more thing that Latin can do that I want to talk about, and that is double vowels. The official name for these is diphthongs, but double vowels is easier, so we're going to go with that. Now, there are 6 of these in Latin. The first 2 on this chart are the most common ones we're going to see. The other 4 you won't see very often. They do exist, so I wanted to show them to you in this chart, but it's these first 2 here that I want you to focus on. So if you see A and E together like this in Latin, this actually pronounces one sound. So that's how these double vowels work. It's these 2 specific vowel pairings that combine to create a single sound. So A, E in Latin next to each other like this is going to be pronounced I. And I have, again, an English example of what that sound looks like in one of our words. They're spelled differently because English doesn't always have words with these vowel pairings that make the same sound. So AE is going to be pronounced I, like in our word aisle. AU, again, this is another one that's fairly common. AU in Latin is going to be pronounced ow, like in our word out with that OU. AE is by far the most common one. You'll be seeing this a lot. This is in a lot of words. So this AE, pronounced I, is the one I want you to focus on the most. Make sure you know that one. These other 4, not super common. I'm going to run through them really quickly. E and I together can make the sound A, like in our word 8. EU, this is a weird one for English speakers. We don't really have this kind of sound. It's an AU sound. It's kind of like combining the 2. Again, not super common. Don't worry too much about it. O and E together is going to be pronounced oi, like in our word oil. This one's pretty rare as well. And then UI, again, this one's kind of a weird one. You sort of just really quickly combine the 2 sounds to make it into one sound. It's this oui sound, which is actually, you see this in French pronunciations. Like the word oui in French is spelled O-U-I, so it's got that kind of a pronunciation. Again, these bottom 4, don't worry too much about them. If you can remember A-E being pronounced I and A-U being pronounced ow, I'll be very happy. All right, last slide, just a little bit more practice. Thank you for hanging in with me so far. We have our first word practicing our long O. Again, this is a somewhat easier one. This word is pronounced os. It's our Latin word for mouth. All right, this last one. Again, we have this long I here. This is one that's going to trip people up more often than not. This word is pronounced not oculi, right? This word is pronounced oculi. Remember, our long I in Latin is pronounced E, so keep that in mind. This is our word for eyes. This is a nice long word. We've got our double vowel here, this AE that I told you is really common. this word is pronounced caeruleus. Caeruleus. This is our word for blue. All right, we have again that consonantal I here. Remember, that's going to be a y sound with that long E that's pronounced A. So this word is going to be yeuna, yeuna. And this is our word for hungry. All right, next we have another double vowel, that AU. That's the other one that I told you we're going to see a bit more often than the rest of them. This is that ow sound. And then we have again our long E with that A sound. So this is pronounced aures, aures. It's our word for ears. And then we have, again, that long I. This is not pronounced equi. That happens a lot. If you do it, it's okay. It's going to happen at least once, I'm sure of it. But try to remember that long I makes an E sound. It is pronounced equi. This is our word for horses. And then last but not least, we have a long U. This particular vowel is not as common, but it does happen. And here we have that long U with that oo sound. It's manus. And this particular word, it's very important to get that oo sound, because if you spell this word without the long U at the end, and it's a short U and it's pronounced manus, it actually changes the meaning of the word. Manus with a short U means hand, singular. Manus with a long U actually means hands, plural. So it is important to make sure you don't mix up those long and short vowels. All right, that is it for Latin pronunciation practice. So hopefully this was a bit helpful. Again, you're not going to be perfect at pronunciation right away. Even if you've been doing Latin for a year, then it's still sometimes easy to mess up some things. So don't worry about it. We'll help you through it. I'll help correct you if needed. It takes practice, but we will get through it together. And thank you so much for watching. And again, happy first week of school. It's so great to have you. I'm so excited to move forward and be your new Latin teacher. Thank you and have a lovely day.